Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the video. Today, we're going to be talking about One Piece over animation and, is it a good thing? Is it even a real thing? Now, I will say, yes, it's a real thing. This started back in Naruto. You had the Naruto pain fight back in Naruto Shippuden. That fight was memed on because of how bad it looked for people. It was very jarring. And I'll even pull up the frames for you. I'll show you. I mean, you can look right here. They got really memed and trashed for how bad this looked when they started doing this. Now they got better later on, but I think over animation is really a thing. Now on Twitter, people have been going saying, "Oh, that's not a thing. You guys are tourists. Just shut up." So I wanted to watch this video by Chibi Reviews, provide some input as he goes, and let me know what you guys think down below in the comments as well. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Now this is going to be at 1.5. Just to make it a little faster. All right, let's go.
I don't know how anyone can take a look at this segment and think that One Piece is poorly animated, or it is just not getting some of the best animation that I have personally seen in a long-running anime. Like, it is honestly jaw-dropping how incredible this segment is. This goes on, I'm not joking, for like 4 minutes, and that's just this segment alone. There is literally multiple moments throughout this episode with just straight up, like, movie-level quality. Like, individual frames, in between frames, obviously most people are not going to notice, even look highly detailed and fluid. I love the movements of Kizaru here, seeing how his, like, clones, like his copies, are moving into position. You see the blades coming in, you see the lights coming into the background and all that. You see how the camera is panning and twisting.
All this excessive camera movement, all this excessive animation in this frame, as a casual user, for me, makes it hard to follow. Look at it from this way. Here's an example. One Piece has had this issue before. So they started doing this really over the top animation towards the end of the Wano arc when they got into the big fights between Luffy and Kaido, Zoro and King. And Zoro and King specifically was an example of a fight where a lot of people stated they had to watch it multiple times to understand what the fuck was going on due to all the flashy over the top effects. Look, it looks nice. And as an animator, I'm sure you probably love it, but I do think it's an issue. Part of the problem with this is that it's a pacing issue. And we already know One Piece itself has a pacing issue. It's already extremely slow paced. My wife and I rewatched it, but I made her start from episode 1. Now, this was a rewatch for me because I've already seen everything because I've been watching it weekly up until this point. We watched from episode 1 all the way to like whatever episode over 1,000 or so in Wano. Now, once it took the 6-month break, she had no desire to go back to it. The pacing of the Luffy Kaido fight, of the Zoro King fight, the Sanji fights, all that stuff, all the big battles in Wano, the pacing of it killed her desire to watch it. And I honestly noticed it as well. It felt like it had drastically slowed down compared to the pacing of other major fights in the other One Piece arcs. Anime is known for its long fights. I get it. Like Dragon Ball Z, you had Frieza tried to destroy planet Namek, didn't do it. He's like, it's going to blow up in 5 minutes. Well, that 5-minute time span lasted how many episodes? So I understand, but it seems like One Piece in and of itself has taken that sort of pacing and it's like tripled the time. So it's already extremely slow. So when you add all of this over on top of it, then you're slowing it down even more. Plus, you got budget misallocation where anime productions, they're already often very tight. So when you pour all the resources into this flashy animation, are you going to get your return on investment with it, right? Visual overload, right? I mean, too much movement or complex visuals, it can overwhelm viewers. So I don't know. I think there's a problem.
This episode. So basically, this episode of One Piece is yo, look at that. Look at this frame.
How is he screen recording Crunchyroll? I try to do that, and it's black. Like I don't know. I'll have to reach out to him and figure out how the hell he's doing that.
Look at the hand, like here, when it comes in. It is so subtle, but I love the way it is done here. Like, look at that. It's such a quick frame.
Okay, cool. This looks nice. That's cool. I don't care. As a person who's watching this was like one quick little frame. It does nothing for me. At some point, I was like, what the fuck was that? What is that doing? It's so fast and it's just so out of nowhere. Unless I go through it slowly, like he's kind of doing here. As the user, not user, excuse me, IT, I'm stuck in that brain. As a consumer, I don't know what this is trying to tell me. You know what I mean?
but the light shining through the hand, it's so cool because I can't be the only one that's like had a flashlight or something like a very bright light and put it on your hand and you see the light come through your finger or something. You kind of see like the light shine through. That's basically what this is. It's showing that Kizaru's light is so blindingly bright that it's shining through people's bodies, and I love this. It's a nice little detail that obviously the common watcher is not going to notice or care too much about, but it's added there for those that really want to dive in and analyze scenes. Like,
if your common watcher is not going to notice it, or if it confuses your common watcher, then it's pointless. This did not need to be there. Wasted time, wasted money, just no. Again, too much.
This. It's just, like I said, it's very high quality. The entire work of this episode is, I'm not gonna lie, this might be recency bias. It could potentially be, but I'm not going to deny that this might be, at the very least, the top 10 best animated episodes of One Piece. Like, I cannot believe what I have witnessed in this. Like,
I personally thought the fight scenes in Solo Leveling were much better, and even then, they had issues with it being overly animated to the point where I had to really focus really hard and pay really close attention to what the fuck was going on to make sure I understood. And even then, I am not entirely sure I captured everything that they were trying to portray in those fight scenes, honestly.
It keeps going on. It gets better and better. People are trying to slander this, by the way, and say that it's over animated. I really hate that term. I really want to say that. I understand where the criticism is coming from. I know what they are trying to mean, but over animated just seems like there's just people are upset that it looks so animated that they don't like it. That's what it sounds like. But I will talk.
Dude, no, that's not what it means at all. What your common end user like myself it means when they say over animated is they can't understand what the fuck is going on. They can't follow the fight. When someone throws a punch or throws a kick or someone counters, how the fuck are they seeing it? That's part of the problem. That's what they mean by over animated. I mean, it's too fluid. There's too much going on the scene that people can't follow what the hell is actually going on. And I may not be saying it in the best manner either, but you know what? I'm not an animator. If you can't understand what I'm saying, well, maybe that's a you problem.
Talk about that in a second. I think that is some fair criticism to be had, but I don't think it's necessarily warranted for this episode of One Piece. But
yes, it is.
I will say
yes,
that,
it is.
This episode, man,
that's pretty. That was a pretty light show, and that's what a lot of this over animation is. It's pretty, but does it clearly convey what the hell is actually going on, or do you just like, ooh, pretty? Oh, Luffy won, yay! And you don't know how. You don't know what. You don't see every single kick thrown. You don't see every single punch thrown. You don't see it land. You don't see it going from Luffy over to Kizaru. You don't see any of that sometimes. If you can't clearly see it, I think it's a problem. I really do.
I love what Toei Animation and the animators are doing for Kizaru versus Luffy here, using the multiple clones and the lights and stuff, the background art.
That's cool.
It is a nice culmination of everything that really just makes a good One Piece fight, or a shonen fight in general. And I mean, it's very clear that those
that must be giant Luffy. That's cool too.
One Piece anime really did wonders for this show. Like, we really are seeing the benefits, and a good example of why giving your staff in the show more production time really is just a benefit overall. It's just a net positive, and I'm very happy that Toei and everyone else that's affiliated.
I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure I'm 100% on board with this type of stuff. I don't know how to describe it, right? It's almost like I don't know. I'd much prefer stuff like this. Like over here. I liked how they animated the fights in the old days. I really did. I thought it looked good. That's just me. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what type of style this is. I don't know what to call it. I'm not an animator, but I don't know. It almost looks a little, almost, when you crinkle up a piece of paper and then you unfold it a little bit, there's always like wrinkles and lines and stuff. To me, that's what I think of when I see this. I don't know. It's okay. It's okay.
With the production of One Piece, took the chance of that delay, because honestly, this is the best that One Piece has legitimately ever looked. Like, it's looked really good in Wano, it's looked really good in the first half of Egghead we got, but this stuff, part 2 of Egghead for the anime of One Piece, this is legitimately some of the best, most consistent animation we have ever seen. And don't get me wrong, Wano was very consistent too, and so was Egghead, like the first half of it, but this is just straight up so consistent, it's like next level. Like, it's just...
The animation for the Wano arc did jump to a whole new level at the very beginning, and it looked really good, and I liked it, but I felt like they jumped the shark as they went further and further into the arc, because then they jumped it even more as far as the animation goes, and I think that was a problem. I think it's too much at that point.
movie level animation and art every single segment.
I hate
Like, look,
that
I'm
he's
gonna
saying
back
that,
up here,
movie
and, like,
level.
there's literally a scene here where you just see, like, Rob and Zoro duking it out, and it is just such a great moment. And once again, the main spotlight or focus of this episode would be Kizaru and Luffy, but you have this great moment of just these two battling out. Don't get me wrong, really great fight too, but what I'm saying is that they didn't just prioritize one moment of the episode, because that was a common theme that happened so often with the One Piece anime. Honestly, with a lot of long-running shows, is that you would have certain fights or certain moments of fights or the series get prioritized and have high-quality animation art, but everything else would be more or less sacrificed just to make that sequence even better. And that is not the case. It's very clear that the people that worked on this episode, they did not sacrifice segments of the episode. In fact, they were consistent.
I don't personally mind if certain segments are sacrificed. I don't really care. I just want to be able to clearly see what the fuck is going on. And if things are flashing by so fast on the screen that your eyes and mind are almost in shock because you don't know what the hell you just saw and you're trying to process it while the fight is still going on the TV, that's a problem. You need a way to relay speed and power in your show without confusing the hell out of your user. And Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, Dragon Ball in general has done a very good job of doing this. One Piece did a very good job of this prior to reaching this level. So, I mean, that over animation, yes, Chibi, is an issue.
From start to finish, and this really does feel like a completed project, and it makes me happy as a One Piece fan, as someone that has been watching the One Piece anime since 2011, seeing One Piece like this is legitimately a dream come true. I could not imagine if I was to tell myself in 2011 what I would be witnessing in 2025 when it came to One Piece. I wouldn't believe it, because this is just insane stuff. But with that being said, though, I guess we should talk about the over-animated allegations against this episode of One Piece, because I have seen those complaints. Now, I haven't seen, like, a lot.
That's what we're here for.
Like a vast amount, but it is there.
No, I've seen it more and more people complain about, not just with One Piece, it's with other animations now, and I do think it's a valid criticism. I really do.
And I think people have definitely seen it as well, and it is a conversation that definitely spurs back up anytime you have something like this with One Piece or other anime, so it is very relevant. So let's get into that. Over-animated, what does this necessarily mean? Why does this word exist, etc.?
Yes,
well,
please tell me.
If I had to take an educated guess, there is multiple reasons. One, it's usually out of jealousy. People don't like seeing something that they deem probably they don't like animated so well, because for a very long time, for like basically a decade, One Piece...
It's Chibi. Come on. Look, I don't want to insult you by just outright saying, are you dumb here? But are you dumb? Why would you sit here and say it's just out of jealousy? That shouldn't, look, if you want to use that excuse, that should be like your last excuse. It should not be your very first point you're making when you're talking about this whole over animation thing. Come on now.
Piece was the butt of a joke. It was not good in terms of animation. The anime was inferior in every single way in comparison.
At no point in time have I ever felt that One Piece was inferior to other animes. I haven't. Look, not every anime is animated the same way. That's fine. One Piece to me has always been a great anime, both in animation and story and everything. I've never had an issue with the way they've done things. Now, I have skipped some of the filler, like the Foxy Pirates, I think it was. But yeah, you know.
Since the manga, it was just not... There was no reason to really watch it unless you're just a diehard dedicated fan. And then Wano came around, and the One Piece anime took a radical shift.
I think he is completely wrong with this whole One Piece point right here. I really do. I could not disagree more.
We all saw it, and obviously now, thanks to that, most people don't even remember the bad parts of One Piece.
There is no bad parts, except for, again, the Foxy Pirates, whatever the fuck they're called. Now, I will say the best part about that is we got to see Luffy in an afro. But, you know, other than that, that part was horrible. But the One Piece anime overall has always been good. It's always been top tier, even for a weekly anime. Dude, you're losing credibility here if you're making this point that it wasn't good and didn't get people wanting to watch it until Wano. Really? Seriously? Come on. That's bull.
That's just how much, reputation and a win that Toei gained themselves with Wano and with also Egghead.
No, the reputation, the reason it got attention is because of how much they jumped the animation at that point. They jumped it by quite a bit. I don't know why. I don't know what triggered it. But all I'm saying is, if you're going to sit here and tell me it was garbage up until then, and the only reason you watched is because you were a diehard One Piece fan, no, get out of here with that shit. Come on. Whatever.
So when you think about how One Piece was a long time ago, there's a lot of people that, don't like the fact that One Piece is now no longer able to be clowned on for bad art and animation. Now, usually what people like to use now is pacing, which, yeah, to be fair, One Piece does have some pacing issues with the anime.
Who's clowning on One Piece because of the anime? I'm sorry, I've not seen that. Now, granted, I'm not terminally online, so maybe I missed this. That's all I'm saying. Now the pacing's always been a little slow, but it's gotten drastically worse in Wano. And guess what else happened in Wano? Oh, their animation jumped. Is there a correlation here? Like I said earlier, I think over animation could lead and worsen any potential pacing issues you already had.
I'm not gonna act like it doesn't. But when people say over animated, usually it comes from a place of jealousy, most likely. However, there is some criticism there that can be warranted, and this is what I'm gonna talk about now. So when it comes to the feat or over animated in general, what that necessarily means, I feel like what people are trying to say is that you don't understand what's going on the
Yes.
screen. Maybe there's too much movement going on with the characters, maybe the choreography's a little.
This should have been your first point, Chibi. This should have been your first point, not the whole stupid jealousy. One Piece was bad before Wano animation type shit. Come on.
Bit funky, maybe the background doesn't mesh well with the way the characters are moving, something feels a little bit off, and so your eyes are not able to process what's necessarily going on in the scene because there's just so much going on.
Yes.
And this is where I think the term over animated comes into play because people just don't know what's going on. There's just so many lights, so many bright flashing lights and fights and stuff that you just don't understand what.
So you're saying there's too much animation there? Maybe animation is the wrong word. I don't know, but there's so much fucking going on. People have an issue with it. And guess what? This is an animated show, so that's why they say it's over animated.
Eyes are trying to look at. And
if you think that's a bad term, give me a better term to use. That's all I'm saying. Whether it's Chibi or somebody on Twitter, if you don't like the term over animated, then give me a better term to use. Or just say you don't know what the fuck we're talking about. Don't pretend like you don't, because people are very clear when they say over animated. It's very clear what they're talking about when they use the examples that they're using.
I feel like a good example of this is sometimes within Demon Slayer. Now, no hate to Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer also is a very beautiful show.
I said Demon Slayer.
That definitely are just very
and it's a great
colors, and it can be very blinding.
Love it.
One Piece has had examples of this in the past as well, some moments. Not often, but it does have it too. And what I'm trying to say is that
One Piece never had an issue with over animation until Wano. Up until then, you could always very clearly see what the fuck was going on in the One Piece animation. Always.
There is criticism sometimes to maybe a scene is just so animated that it's very hard to process because there's just too much movement, and maybe the direction of this, the cut isn't that good. That's my personal opinion on it. You can feel free to disagree with me, but that's my 2 cents. But I do think that in turn, usually over animated is just used to slander a show. It's not necessarily.
Oh my god, dude, who are you interacting with on Twitter? If you sit here and you're defaulting to the fact that you think this is being used to just slander a show, you need to stop interacting with those people and start interacting with real anime fans, because real anime fans will tell you over animation does not have anything to do with jealousy. I mean, come on.
Necessarily meant to actually critique it. It's just out of jealousy. But like I said, there is criticism to be had. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. I have spent enough talking about this.
Oh Lord, dude, I love your videos and I have respect for you, but I lost a little bit of it when you default to the it's over jealousy. Maybe that's because of the people you interact with on Twitter. I don't know. That's dude, you got to do a better job of curating your audience at that point, or curating the people you interact with. Over animation is a thing. One Piece just started having this issue. Demon Slayer's had that issue. Jujutsu Kaisen had an issue. Solo Leveling, to a point, has even had an issue. Now, Solo Leveling maybe isn't quite as bad as some of the other animes I've seen. But listen, if you can't watch an anime episode and clearly understand what the fuck is going on, that's a problem. Dragon Ball's done it well. Dragon Ball increased their fights, right? Forgive the quality here, because this is on YouTube. But Dragon Ball, their animation took a big step up with Dragon Ball Super, right? I know they had some issues early on because of time crunches, but their fights, whether it be Dragon Ball GT, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, even Dragon Ball GT, you always could clearly see and understand what the fuck was going on with these fights. It was not so overly animated that you had no idea who was punching, who was kicking, who is being knocked into the rocks, who's doing a special attack. You can always clearly see what the hell is going on. Just kind of show you an example here real quick. I mean, you can easily see the attacks. You can easily see the melee, right? You know what's going on. See, I still see them going. Now, One Piece was very much like this up until the later stages of Wano. The early stages of Wano, it pushed to the very edge, but it still stayed within that region of, okay, I can see what's going on. But then the whole Kaido, I felt like the moment was so big, they wanted to make it like a very memorable moment throughout the anime community, and they just went over the top. I really do feel like they went way over the top. So anyway, that's my thought, guys. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Do you understand what over animation is? Do you even think it's a thing? Do you have a problem with the direction of some of the new anime shows and what they're doing? Because, you know, maybe it's just a me problem, right? But when I watch it, sometimes it's hard to follow exactly what's going on. So let me know down below in the comments what you think. Like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more content, and I will talk to you guys next time.